may be seated. Well, today we're starting a brand new series, and I'm excited about this series. We're going to be spending the next several weeks in one passage. So you can mark your Bible, you can mark your notes. It's going to be Luke 15 for the next 10 weeks. I'm just kidding. It won't be that long, unless the Lord wants us there. But we are going to look at it for the next 5 weeks. And over these next 5 weeks, my desire is that we would all get a much clearer understanding of what this passage is about, but that we would also be able to see ourselves in this passage. You know, the Bible isn't just a book of stories of things that happened a long time ago. The Bible is relevant for us today. But sometimes we have to use our imagination and we have to put ourselves in the story. And so this passage especially, there is something in this passage for every one of us in this room. I really do believe that. And so this series is called Far From Home. And, you know, I had to go with that theme because, you know, Spider-Man is out right now. And so, you know, it's like it just fits. And because Luke 15 is about the prodigal sons, let me, you know, emphasize that point, because a lot of times we think it's the prodigal son, but it's the prodigal sons. There is more than one son that is mentioned in this, and neither one of them were really where they needed to be in relation to the father. And so today is kind of more of an overview. I want us to look at this and sort of get an understanding of who Jesus is talking to and what he's talking about. And in this passage, there are so many different elements that go on, but today is kind of just to give us a big picture of what's happening in this story. And over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to look at the prodigal son who left home. We're going to look at the prodigal son who stayed home. And we're going to look about, you know, what does it mean for us to have a homecoming, okay? Because that's what we're doing this September as well, right? So today, Luke chapter 15, verse number 1. Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming near to him to listen to him. Both the Pharisees and the scribes began to grumble, saying, "This man receives sinners, and he even eats with them." Can you believe that? I mean, not only does Jesus receive sinners, but he has the audacity to share a table with them. Now, why this was such a big deal, and maybe it kind of gets lost on us sometimes, is that to have a meal with someone was to invite them into your home. It was to invite them to be part of your family even. When we share meals together, you don't just invite whoever to come over. And so they were saying, this Jesus is saying that he wants a relationship with sinners. The people who are saying this are religious people. The sinners didn't mind, right? The sinners didn't care. They were like, wow, this man actually cares for us. It was the religious people who were saying, wow, I would never be seen with that person, much less share a meal with that person. You see how different Jesus is than the rest of religious people? And you see, this is where there's hope for us. This is where there's hope for everyone, because I want you to understand that if Jesus loves you in the state that you're in, and even the state that you were in before now, he loves everyone else too. And so who are we to say, who is this Jesus having a meal with these people? In fact, it ought to be the church people who are having meals with all the other people too. Because if we are to be like Jesus, and this is what Jesus did, then who are we to separate ourselves and say, oh, well, we're just going to be in our little Christian bubble, our little own subculture, and just kind of stay safe? You see, Jesus was not playing it safe. In fact, Jesus risked his whole being on you and me. You understand that? That Jesus made a decision that altered eternity. Let this sink in for a moment. That before he was born on earth, he existed in perfect communion with the Father up in heaven, right? But when he chose to come to earth, he chose to take on a body. And now he will forevermore have a body. And that body will be scarred forevermore because of you and I. That when we get to heaven, this is how we're going to know who Jesus is, because he will be the only one that will still have scars. All the rest of us, our scars will be gone. Our limbs will be repaired, right? But you won't wonder who Jesus is, because you will be able to see him and know him by his scars. And so Jesus, he kind of flips the script on what it means to truly come and love other people. You see, who would be welcome around your table? Maybe I can ask it that way. Is there anyone that you would not invite to lunch? Is there anyone that you would not be associated with? Is there anyone that you would not share your, Happy Meal with? Right? Don't you remember, you go to, I don't know. I'm guessing kids still do this today. But I remember, there were times when I would take my lunch to school. And there's something just nostalgic about it when I see a brown bag, I had my brown bag, and there were times when I could afford a lunchbox, but there were, most of the times a brown bag. And you go to school with your lunch, and you get your peanut butter and jelly, your ham and cheese or whatever, and kids are trading off what they don't want, right? But you're only trading with a certain few, right? You're not going to trade with those that you don't like. No, even though I don't like his carrots, I don't like you, so I'm going to keep my carrots, right? So, you see, this is how we are sometimes. It's like, well, I'm only going to trade with certain people that I like or who are like me. And so these religious people, they see Jesus doing these things, and they get in an uproar over it time and time again, because Jesus was not religious. Okay? Jesus was not trying to just do these things to impress people. He wasn't just walking around acting as though he had it all together, even though he had it all together, right? Jesus was loving people where they were. And because he was loving people where they were, and because he was reaching out to people that no one else was reaching out to, all the religious people who thought they had it all together got upset. And they said, "This man, look at what he's doing." So Jesus tells a few stories, parables. And in Luke 15, there are 3 parables. The first one is about sheep, okay? And this man who's a shepherd, he has these sheep, and 100 sheep, and one of them wanders off or loses his way. So the shepherd, Jesus says, a good shepherd is going to leave the 99 sheep. He's going to go after the one sheep that's lost. Then he finds it, and he's going to bring it back, and there's going to be a big celebration. And then he tells the second part of the parable. And he says there's a woman who has 10 coins, and she loses one of the coins. And even in her own house, she turns up all the furniture. I don't know about you, but just let one of you lose a remote control. And you're going to be turning that house inside out, upside down, right? Because you got to change that channel. You can't go over and turn the button yourself. You got to find the remote to change it, right? So here's this woman. She is searching high and low for this coin. And when she finds it, she calls everyone else together and says, "Hey, I found my coin. Come and celebrate with me." Well, a parable is a story, okay, that has it's like an earthly context for us to understand, but it has a heavenly meaning. And so Jesus, in both of these parables, okay, he's saying there was something that was lost, then it was recovered or found, and now there's a big celebration. So the religious leaders are hearing all this, and they're saying, "Okay, yeah, of course, sheep, shepherd, that's good. A good shepherd would do that. Oh yes, and a woman, if she lost her coin, she would look to find it. Of course, that makes sense." And then Jesus starts with this third parable about this man and his family. And the key thing that I want you to get today is that relationships are important. Relationships are important. Now you think, a shepherd has a relationship with a sheep. The sheep actually hears the shepherd's voice, and the shepherd knows them by name. They have a relationship. The sheep is important. This woman who has this coin, she has this relationship because it was probably a coin that was given to her, passed down through the family. Think about that. You have heirlooms. You have things that you've been given. And so when she loses one, this is why she's so frantically searching, not just because it's a coin, but because it has value and meaning attached to it. A relationship is attached to it. So here's Jesus now talking about this other relationship, a family relationship. And this is what I want you to understand today. That Once you're in the family of God, you're always in the family of God. You're born into a family. And it doesn't matter what you do or how you act within that family, you're always in the family. Now, some of you may feel like, well, I'm not part of the family. Or I've been treated like I didn't belong. Or I would certainly like to kick some people out of the family, right? But you see, you can't control that. You don't control that. So Jesus starts talking about this man and this family, and everybody, all these religious people, they're like, okay, we got another story. And Jesus starts with the story, and he says, and he said, a man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate that falls to me. Let's stop right there for a second. These religious people, they hear Jesus talking about this. They all identify because they're all men. Most of them probably have children. And when they hear this part of the story, their ears perk up. And they say, you're telling me that a young son came to his father and said, give me what belongs to me now. And they're like, Now I want you to think about this. What if your child came to you and said, hey, Dad, give me my inheritance now. I wish you were dead. That's right. That is exactly right. Bless them, Lord, because I ain't. Right? Because that's what this younger son is saying. And so their ears are perking up and they're like, what? If my son came to me and said, I wish you're as good as dead to me. Some of y'all would be pulling out this line, right? I brought you in this world, I'll take you out. Right? That's what some of us would be saying. So their ears are perking up and they're like, there is no way that my child would talk to me that way and live. You see, back in this day, they had a law. They had the rights as fathers to kick that child out of the house. And even if it was so bad, the elders could even take them out to the edge of the city and stone that child because of a lack of respect for the family. So when Jesus says this, all the men, they think, oh, we know exactly what would happen. This is what would be going down right here, right now. And then Jesus throws this in. So he divided his wealth between them. Put the brakes on. Hold on there. What? What are you talking about? What do you mean he divided his wealth among them? Jesus said, yeah, it's my story. I'm going to tell it. Right? And so Jesus begins to set up this picture of this relationship between a father and his sons that is completely different than anything they had been accustomed to. Now, I want to say this. You don't have to go far from home to be far from home. This young man in the story is putting together this story because his heart was already someplace else. It wasn't that all of a sudden he's just having this idea, I've been hanging out with my buddies, last night, and they said, yeah, why don't you just go and get what's yours now, No, he's been thinking about this. And even though he's just now telling this to his father, his heart has not been there for a while. Now, he still had a relationship to the father. He still was part of the family. But now, all of a sudden, he is coming and saying, I don't want a relationship with you. I don't want to be part of anything that's happening here. Many of you are familiar with this phrase that home is where your heart is, right? Or maybe home is where you lay your hat, right? Unless Papa was a Rolling Stone. Okay? But you see, the thing is this, is that we can say we are at home, But home is really where your heart is. Is your heart at home with the Father? Where is your heart this morning? Jesus is telling this story, and he's talking to these religious people who are saying they know so much about God, that they love God, all this, with these flowery prayers and this ostentatious display of religiosity. That's a big word, it's hard to say. But Jesus is like, but where is your heart? Where is your heart? Is your heart at home with the Father? Do you really love him? Or do you just love the way you look in front of everybody else? And Jesus is pulling together a story that is going to blindside them. But Jesus did not hold anything back from speaking to the religious people. I mean, look at Matthew 12:34. Matthew 12:34, he says to these very same religious people, "You brood of vipers! How can you, being evil, speak what is good? For the mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart." Whatever is in your heart is going to come out of your mouth. And this is why we have to guard our hearts. This is why we have to be careful with what we are saying, because what we say is a reflection of what's in our hearts. So Jesus is telling these religious people, he's saying, you guys talk a lot about all this stuff, but I see how you live. And I see what you're saying. And these rules and regulations and all these things that you think are so important, it's not really about that. It's about a relationship with the Father. Matthew 15:18. But the things that proceed out of the mouth, they come from the heart, and those are the things that defile a man. It's what comes out of your mouth. And so if your heart is not at home with the Lord, right? It's going to be shown by what you say. There were certain things that we could and could not say at home. And I got in trouble when I said certain things. You probably got in trouble when you said certain things. And for me, I did not grow up, we didn't grow up cussing. I just didn't say, I got in trouble if I said, confounded. I'm serious. I didn't even know what that word meant, but I thought I was using it in a good context, and I was like, I was told, don't you ever say that word again. Okay. That's what that word means, bewildered, right? Y'all know what that word means, right? Okay, confused, right? And I got in trouble for saying that. There are other things that I would get in trouble for, so we just had to be resolved to just call each other names like animals, like you dog, you cat. We just go back and forth with different things like that, because we were not allowed to say certain things because that was our family dynamic. Now, there are some places where you would go and maybe you're hanging out with your friends and they have language that you can just say whatever you want to say. It's not a big deal. But you know what? What you're saying out of your mouth reveals what's in your heart. And if you're not careful and you end up with all this filthy language, that is I don't want to say it's a definer, but it does show, okay? It does show what's going into your heart. Whatever's going into your ears, whatever's going into your life, it's going to take root and it will come out of your life. Look at this. Luke 6:45, the good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth what is good, and the evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth what is evil, for his mouth speaks that which fills his heart. So Jesus is dealing heavily with these religious people about their hearts. It's about our heart. Do we share the heart of the Father? This young man did not share the heart of his father. He didn't have love for his father. He just loved his father's stuff. And he said, you know what? You're as good as dead to me. I don't care about you. I just want your stuff. So go ahead and give it to me now. Go ahead and let me have it now. And I wonder how many of us may find ourselves in that same situation. The reason the son had a problem with the father's house is because he didn't share the father's heart. It's really hard to live with people when you don't share the same values, right? You can't live with someone, you can't stay with someone if you're not on the same page. This is why a lot of people end up in relational trouble. It's because you can't share space with someone who doesn't share the same values. And this is why it's so important for us whenever we're pursuing relationships of any kind. Doesn't matter whether it's dating or marriage. I mean, friendships. You can't be friends with someone if they don't have the same values. Because, as I've illustrated before, it is so much easier for someone to pull you down than for you to pull them up. And I know there are a lot of people who think, well, I'm strong enough. You know, the Bible says pride comes before a fall. So you've got to be careful with how you surround yourself with certain people. There's nothing wrong with reaching out and trying to befriend other people and trying to help people see that there is a different and a better way. But they cannot be your best friends. Look at what Amos chapter 3, verse number 3 says. Can two walk together unless they are agreed? Can two people actually walk together? I mean, can they actually be friends unless they are agreed on something? You have to be agreed on something if you're hanging out together, whether that's a video game or whether it's, sports, whatever it is. You have friendships and relationships with people because you share something in common. So this man has this issue. Well, actually, the son has an issue with this man, his father. And he says, the only thing we have in common is your stuff. So why don't you get out of the way so I can have your stuff? That's pretty heavy. And he said to them, a man had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate that falls to me. And so he divided his wealth between them. A lot of times, there's a lot of talk around the younger son. And we're going to spend a lot of time on the younger son in coming weeks. But I want you to see this here. The father gave the inheritance to both of them, not just to the young one. He divided his inheritance and gave his inheritance to both the children at the same time. There are 3 things I want you to think about today for people who might be far from home. And I'll make this quick. The first thing is this, is that you might be committed, but just because you're committed doesn't mean you have a relationship with the Father. There are a lot of people who are committed to different things. You can be committed to going to church, but just because you go to church doesn't mean you're a follower of Jesus. There are a lot of people who might be committed to even reading the Bible, but reading the Bible does not make you a Christian. It doesn't make you a follower of Jesus. What makes you a follower of Jesus is being committed to Jesus, right? It's not just to doing religious things, it is being committed to a person. And that person is Jesus. And if Jesus is not the main attraction in your life, then you need to call into question, do I have a relationship with Jesus? Because you can have a lot of peripheral things going on in your life that can make you look like, oh, wow, that person's a Christian. They go to church, or they read their Bible, or they pray. But just because you pray to God doesn't mean you're praying to Yahweh. Because a lot of people can say, oh, I'm praying to God. Which God? This is why we're having this study over the next few weeks, right? So that you can learn about things like hedonism and secularism and atheism and on and on and on. Because even people who say they don't believe in a God, they still worship a God. They worship themselves. Okay? And so to say you're an atheist is really, it's the wrong thing to say, because we all worship a God. It's just you don't worship the God I choose to worship. Okay? And so here's the thing that we've all got to realize is that unless we worship Yahweh through the person of Jesus Christ and his sacrificial, substitutional death on the cross for us, then we do not have a relationship with God. Because doing religious things does not make you have a relationship with God. Being committed to rules and rituals doesn't mean you have a relationship. And there are a lot of people who are committed to rituals and traditions. There are a lot of people who get up and they go to church and they do all the spiritual stuff that you're supposed to do. But that does not make you a follower of Jesus. And so Jesus, who was there in flesh and blood, was telling all the religious people, you're doing all this stuff, but you don't know the Father. Because you don't know me. And because you don't know me, you can't know him. Parents, tell me if this equation is true. Rules minus relationship equals rebellion. Rules minus relationship equals rebellion. You can have tons of rules in your family, but you know what those rules are going to do? All those rules are going to do is going to make your kid want to rebel unless you have relationship. It's the relationship that matters. It's the relationship with the family that matters. It's sharing the same heart and understanding the reason we have rules is because I have a heart for you. I have these rules because I love you. I have these things not to prevent you from the best, but to help you achieve the best. And this is why God has given us rules. We have the Ten Commandments. We have the Old Testament. We have the example of Jesus, not just so that we have all these limitations. And that's what's so crazy is that God is not a God of limitations. God is a God of freedom. God is a God of liberty. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. There is freedom. But everybody wants to paint this picture of a God who's just trying to prevent you from having the very best. I don't see that picture in Scripture at all. The picture I see in Scripture is of a Savior who comes and gives his life, who sheds his blood so that we could have something we don't deserve. You know, the worst thing that could happen for some of us is that God would give you what you're asking for. Because sometimes we think we know what we want. And if God were to give you everything you were asking for, it would not be a pretty picture. Sometimes God doesn't allow certain things to happen in our lives, not because he's a bad God, but because he's a good one. And your parents, sometimes, they didn't allow you to do certain things, not because they didn't love you, but because they did love you. And they said, no, you're not going there. You're not hanging out with the Joneses across the street. Right? No. They got in trouble. They got in trouble. You ain't getting in trouble. You're going to stay here. And even if you say you hate my guts, I still love you. And this is what's best for you. Second thing for people who are far from home, they can buy into this mentality, just being consumers. This young man was a consumer. He was like, just give me, more. Give me what's mine right now. And if I get more when you die, then what are we waiting for? You see, we live in a very consumeristic society where the value of life and the value of others is extremely diminished. That we only want to use people to get what we want. And it's all about what we want. Let me ask you, do you share the Father's heart today? Or are you just trying to use people to get something? The Father divided his wealth between them. You know what this means? This means that the Father had to actually take his land, his property, and he had to sell it off. He had to act as though he were dead. And in this day and time, the younger son would get 1/3 of what the father had. The older son would get 2/3. So the father goes and he sells off what he has and he begins to distribute what he has to his children. The older son gets 2/3, the younger son gets 1/3, and this is the way it works. And so when the people are hearing this, when these religious people are hearing this, they're like, there is no way we would do that. Because for this man to do that, he is losing his own identity. Can you imagine what's wrapped up in your identity? You know, we all dress a certain way because that's who we are. We like it. I'm still amazed by how many people comment on my earrings. Yesterday I was at a drive-thru. The girl, like, before she even takes my money, I like your piercings. I'm like, cool. You want my money? Right? So, you know, and it's just so funny how the things that sometimes we don't think about, but these are identifiers to people. Well, back in this day, you were identified by your property, by what you have. You know, we still do the same thing. I mean, I live at 130 Tahoe Drive. My house, you drive by my house, you're going to be like, yeah, that's where George lives. That house is identified with me. And so here is this man, he's identified with this property. And so for him to sell off his property is to sell off his identity and to act as though he were nothing. The word here for his living, he divided his property among them, his wealth among them. The word here in Greek is actually bios. Now, some of you are probably familiar with biology, okay? That means the study of life. So what the scripture is telling us here is this man divided his life among them. He gave up his life for them. Isn't this the picture of what God and Jesus did for us? That he made himself of no reputation. He gave up his life for us. The younger son didn't want the father, he just wanted his stuff. And sadly to say, some of us are the same way with God today. We're not really interested in God being part of our life. We just want God to answer our prayers. We just want God to give us something. We just want God to intervene in our life in some way that's going to make us happy. And by the way, if you're wanting to hear more about this kind of mentality, which is really pervasive throughout our society nowadays, come this Wednesday night to this Bible study because we're going to be talking about moralistic therapeutic deism. Some of you are like, what? Exactly. MTD. Not MTV. MTD, right? Moralistic therapeutic deism. Because this is what our society is all about nowadays. It's about just making me happy, and God just exists for me. And if God is not going to give me what I want, I really don't have time for God. So come this Wednesday and find out some more. But this young man is probably dealing with some of these same kind of things. How often do we come to God and simply tell him what we want him to do instead of simply spending time with him? How many times do we come to God and we just treat him like a vending machine and saying, okay, I'm putting in my 5 seconds of prayer and I expect you to do an eternity of changes for me. And so the trade-off, it just doesn't even make sense. And we wonder why we're not closer to God. We wonder why we don't have a greater relationship with God. It's not because God is unwilling. It's because that we don't really want it. We just want his stuff. We just want his blessings. What we all need to understand is this, is that when we get to heaven, heaven's going to be about God. It's going to be about Jesus. It's not going to be about your mansion over the hilltop. It's not going to be about your crowns that you earned on this earth. Because every crown that we get on earth, you know where it's going to be? It's going to be at his feet. So it don't matter how many you got. You ain't going to have any when you get there. They're all going to be at his feet. And so for us, we need to get used to understanding that life and life here and eternal life is only going to be about Jesus. It's not going to be about anything else. And so we've got to get used to that. Otherwise, we need to check our relationship with the Father. The father was within his rights to kick the boy out and even have him stoned for treating him with disrespect. Look at this in Deuteronomy 21. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline him, will not listen to them, then his father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of the city at the gate of the place where he lives. And they shall say to the elders of the city, This is our son. This our son is stubborn and rebellious, and he will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel shall hear and fear. You want to know why we have some of the issues we have in our society today? It's because we did not deal with problems the way we should have. And I'm not saying that we need to take people out and stone them to death. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is this, is that when there's a punishment that needs to happen, we need to follow through. How often do we say, oh, well, I said that, I said you were going to get a whipping, but I didn't do it. Or I said I was going to discipline you, but I forgot. This was serious business back then. And, disrespect among families and among children, it's the highest it's ever been, isn't it? We need to start thinking about these things, what it is that's causing this. And I'm going to say that technology plays a lot into it. And the things that you may be teaching at home, they're learning from somebody else's home something different. Either through technology or because they're hanging out with people that don't share the same values. At the center of consumerism is self. Self. It's what's going to make me happy. It's what I want. And the self is the very thing that separates people from God. Adam and Eve, when they were tempted with the apple to eat of the fruit, it wasn't the apple itself. It was the action. They chose to rebel against God. And it was in their heart. What's in your heart today? The third and final thing is this, being conformed. God's goal for us is to be conformed to the image of His Son. God's goal for us is to share His heart, to be one with Him. Paul said this in Philippians chapter 3, verse 7 through 11, but whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ. Can you imagine this younger son saying, hey, Dad, no, I was wrong. Whatever's to my gain, no. I want to just be part of the family. Paul says, I had a lot of things that I could gain from this world. I had a lot of things that I could have accumulated, that I could have just said, yeah, this is mine. This is me. I've earned this. But he said, instead, I have counted everything as lost because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For His sake, I have suffered the loss of all things and count them as rubbish in order that I may gain Christ and be found in Him. Not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but that which comes through faith in Christ, the righteousness from God that depends on faith, that I may know Him and the power of His resurrection and may share His sufferings. Look, becoming like Him in His death. The younger son wished his father was dead. What Paul is saying is this. He's saying, no, I look at myself as though I'm dead. The younger son didn't realize that he was the one who needed to die to self. How about you? Are you willing to die to yourself? Are you willing to give up everything that's within your right to have? Would you be willing to say, God, even though it is my right to have, I'm going to wait for the right time? How often do we get impatient and we try to make things happen instead of waiting for God to work? You see, it's about timing. The younger son was going to get his inheritance when the father died naturally, but he couldn't wait for it. He was just selfish. How about for us? If it's really worth praying for, then it's worth waiting for. So be willing to wait on God, because every prayer isn't going to happen just like a genie in a bottle. God is not Aladdin, right? Or the genie, I guess. We're the ones who are Aladdin, yeah. That wasn't in my notes. So, okay? So, as we wrap up, I want to share this final thing with you. It's all about the gospel of Jesus. It's all about the gospel. Let me tell you what gospel means. It means God's only Son provides eternal life. God's only Son provides eternal life. And when Jesus was talking to this religious people, he was saying, guys, I want you to understand, it's not about your religion. It's not about your rules. It's about me coming to die for you. Are you willing to accept that you have a need? Are you willing to accept that I am the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one gets to the Father except by me? And the religious people didn't like that. They didn't like hearing that they couldn't do enough themselves. There are two different kinds of words used for life in the Scripture. One is bios. Anybody know what the other one is? Zoe. Thank you. Zoe. And Zoe means like real life, everlasting, eternal life. It means life that you cannot get on your own. It's a life that has to be given to you. So when we think about bios, this is physical life. But Jesus said, I have come to give you Zoe. I've come to give you life that you cannot get on your own. I've come to put life inside of you, a life that is not like this life. It's a life that lasts forever. John 10:10, we hear Jesus say, I have come that they may have life, that they may have Zoe. And Zoe to the fullest. What the Son missed was that he had a life that he didn't realize he had at the Father's house. And as we talk more in the future, you're going to see this Son gave up a whole lot that he realized he didn't have at that time. And this is what I want you to take home, is that sin will distort your dreams and destroy your destiny. This young man was so full of self, so full of sin, that he traded in his relationship and what he had with the Father for something that would never satisfy him outside of his relationship with the Father. Don't let that happen to you. Jesus came to give you life and life more abundantly. Would you bow your heads and pray with me? Hello. So God gave his one and only Son so that whoever believes in him would not perish but could have everlasting life. This life is only found in Jesus. It's not found in our rules or religion. It's found in a relationship. And that relationship is made possible because of what Jesus did for us. I wonder today, do you share the Father's heart? Have you been just treating him as someone who exists to just make us happy? Because Jesus, Yahweh, are much, much more than that. So, Father, we come to you today in Jesus' name, and we ask you, Father, to search our hearts, to know our thoughts, and to see if there is any wicked way in us. And then we ask you, God, to give us your heart. Take out our heart of stone and give us a heart of flesh, one that beats with your heartbeat. God, one that cares the way that you care. Father, help us to realize that apart from your grace and your goodness, we would have no hope. So, Lord, help us to be people who are willing to reach out to those who are lost, because you came to seek and to save those which were lost. Father, I don't know what it is that you're saying to your people today, but I know that your word says if we will draw close to you, you will draw close to us. And as we lean in now, speak to our hearts. Change us, Lord. Conform us to the image of Jesus. For it's in his name that we pray.